All right. Can you everyone just a minute? Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
All right. Good. All right. So now this is what we studied earlier, especially this the idea of algorithms, pseudocodes, and all that. Okay. So I have already shown you this and the importance of flowcharts. So today I will be continuing with unit number 2. Okay. Now, because there are too many students, it will be difficult for me to answer every questions during the session itself. So what you can do is, if you have any questions, please leave them in the group chat, and I will answer them separately. All right. Okay. So now we will start with unit 2. So whenever we write a computer program in any language, we would like to store the values of our computation, the intermediate values of our computation, and also the final values of our computations in some memory variables, so that we can then use them for later purpose or for displaying them on the user interface. So these are the uses of variables. So we have variables where we store the values. Now in C language and in other languages and tools also, we have various data types for these variables. So we have character variables, integer variables, strings, doubles, so on and so forth. So these are the various data types. Okay, so I have an example. I created this, and it has got a few data types. One is char, then we have got int. Okay, I have given two. Okay, there are many others, and I will give a glimpse of the others also. So these so any variable will be of a certain type. Okay, and what it means is that if you give a different type, it will give you an error. I mean, if you assign a value that is not compatible with the type of that variable, you will get a compile time error. And I will show this to you. Okay, but by far most important is this part, memory locations. Okay, I'm going to highlight this so that you can have a look. Okay, so memory locations, where is the value of a variable going to get stored? Okay, this can be a stumbling block for many people, especially when we come to pointers. So what happens is that the memory gets allocated when the program is executing. Okay, so if, for example, we have got this program. Okay, suppose we have just compiled it and created the executable file. Okay, so I have um, the object file and the executable file, all those things are there, but you have not yet run the program. Okay, so at this point in time, no memory is getting allocated. Okay, it is just a program that is sitting on your computer. Now when that program runs, at that time, whatever variables you had declared, okay, memory for those variables start getting allocated. Okay, and as far as I remember, but I'll have to cross check this. The memory for these variables get created in a stack. Yeah, now I remember. Okay, so this is what it means. So there will be a portion in your random access memory. And again, when we say memory, going forward, just assume that it is the random access memory of your computer. Okay, that is where these memories get allocated. And they get allocated in a stack. Now, this is what it means. So forget computer programming for some time. Okay, so say for example, you have got say some books, all right, and you put that book on a shelf. Okay, then the next book you put on top of the previous book, then the next one you put on top of the previous one. Okay, so here what we are building is a stack, one on top of the other. If you visualize this in your mind clearly, what is happening is that the first book that you put is at the bottom of the file. All right. Now, if you have to remove a book, suppose you cannot remove from the middle. Okay. For some time, assume that. Okay. What will happen is that you will be removing the top book first. So it is first in, last out. Okay. Which means that the first book that you placed on the shelf will be the last book to be removed. Got it? This is a stack. So what we are doing over here is we are putting one book, say book number 1, on top of that book number 2, on top of that book number 3. Now, if you have to remove, you remove book number 3, but book number 3 was the last book to be placed in the stack. Okay. If you have to remove book number 1, you have to remove the other 2 books first. Okay, which means that book number 1 was the first to join the stack, and it will be the last one to leave the stack. So it is first in, last out. So when we are creating variables, okay, what will happen is at the end of the program, the memory that has been allocated to these variables will get removed. Okay, so if you look at the order in which the variables have been declared, so we have a character char type variable called C. Then we have got an integer type variable called X. Then an integer type variable called Y. What will happen is C will get created first in the stack. On top of that, X will get created, and on top of that, Y will get created. At the end of the program, Y will get removed from the memory first, then X, then C. Okay. So again, if this is not clear, you can uh, send messages on the group chat. All right. Because so many people are there, it will be difficult for me to answer all questions in real time. Okay. But this is how this works. Again, when I said char type variables, now I come back to that. Okay. Here, suppose I give a string. Okay. Now, suppose I go and compile this. I will get an error. This is a compile time error. Why? Because see, it cannot convert a char star, which is a pointer, and we will come to this. If you don't understand this at this point in time, that is fine. I will be going through this in great detail when we study the chapter on pointers. So you will see that this is a compile time error. Okay, and again, a few words about the compile time error and the runtime error is, see, compile time error is where the compiler understands that there is something wrong with the program itself. Okay. Uh, so it tries to help you because see, the compiler is going to help you as a programmer. Okay, it will prevent you from committing mistakes. All right. Whereas I will show you a runtime error. Okay, so let me correct this first. Okay, now suppose I write, I declare another integer type variable, say z is equal to 10 divided by 0. Right. Now let me try to compile this. It is giving me a division, a warning. Okay, it is not preventing me from creating the executable file. Okay, in fact, I can go and execute it. Now here it because there was an exception, it does not show it over here, but it should have given an exception during runtime. Okay, and it did not give me the correct return value. Okay, so this is probably an indication. Maybe that is how this dev C++ works. Okay, so this is the compiler that I have with me. That is the dev C++. Okay, so this is a runtime error, and you will be surprised by how many times, even in tool-based programming, we commit this mistake of not guarding, okay, the value. Okay, so what I can do is let me create 3 of them. I will just give them some values. So A is equal to 10. B is equal to 0. C is equal to A. So here I am fairly sure I will not get a compile time error. Oh, I compile, so it compiles. Okay, and now if I run this fellow, okay, it is giving you this return value. Okay, so let me explain. Here it is pretty simple. What I'm doing is I am initializing variables, so I'm not getting a compile. I'm not getting a compile time warning also. Okay, now, so what is the lesson that we need to learn here? That is, if there is a what you call a division, okay, always check for the value of the denominator. So here, ideally, we should write like this: if then you perform the division. Okay, so here even in, so we are working on C language right now, correct? But I'm not sure what happened here. It is not allowing. Okay, I'll find out why it is not allowing me to save this. It was saving till a few minutes ago. No, it's saved. I don't know what happened. Fine. Okay, coming back. So see here, although we are working in a very simple C language, okay, and here we are performing this check, but please don't think that this kind of a check is needed only in C language. Okay, this is a very practical thing. Okay, and even when I'm working on a tool called Pega, okay, I have created a set of guidelines that the entire team has to follow. One of the items is that if you are performing a division, put a guard condition. Okay, you will be surprised that in the heat of the moment, we don't really realize that we are performing some sort of a division and forget to put a guard condition. So this is a very important thing, and because some of in some of my projects, it is a very data intensive application. Okay, so it performs computations, very complex computations on a lot of data. And one of the computations might be a division, and we might forget to put that there. So, but if there is a guideline, okay, again, this is a sideline or rather a side remark that I can share with you. That is, following checklists and guidelines is a very good practice. So try to build your own checklists during your development work, and always go through those checklists before you hand over your code for testing. Okay. One of the things that you should remember is that sometimes even the testers may not be able to trap this error. Okay. It may happen, it may not happen. Okay. In other words, the denominator might end up being 0, might not end up being 0. Okay, So for the testers, until and unless they have created their own test case, they will not be able to test for that division by zero scenario. So this is something that you need to keep in mind. So, and apologies for the noise. It is, I'm sitting next to the kitchen. So here is the thing. What you can do is that you should follow these guidelines and ensure that you don't commit these mistakes in advance. Another advantage of having this guideline is that even the testers will be able to test properly. Okay, so they will have this test case in their test suite, and there will be an item that will say that, okay, ensure that the denominator ends up being zero and see what happens. Okay, so these are the things that good guidelines that you should follow. Okay, the other lesson that I'm trying to give is the difference between a compile time error and a runtime error. Okay, so here if I don't give this guard condition, I'm not going to get a compile time error. I'm not going to get a compile time warning also. Nothing. The executable file will get created, but there will be a runtime exception. Okay, that is a division. Sorry, that is a difference between the two, between a compile time error and a runtime error. Okay, so here let me execute this one, compile and run. Okay, so here I get a return value of 2. Okay, so I'm not getting the exception value. So this is something that you should understand. And I'll come back to this. I'm not sure what is happening here. Okay, all right. Next is, so I have put the, I've explained memory locations, data types, syntax and logical errors. Syntax, I've already shown that if you are giving a wrong value to a char type variable, syntax, another thing is that suppose you forget to maybe put a semicolon somewhere. Save this and try to compile. Okay, you will get an error here, right? So it did not create the object file because there was a, and keep in mind that, see, it is giving you the error on line number 7, but actually it is in line number 6. So you have to intelligently look where that problem might be. Okay, so all it is saying is that it is expecting this before printf. Okay, which means the problem is here. Okay, and we missed the semicolon. Okay, check again and see what happens, and this time it compiles. Okay, so that is the syntax and logical errors in compilation. Okay. Next is object and executable file. Okay, now see, what will happen is that when you are writing your code, it is okay. Now we need to take a step back and understand another concept, okay, which is not directly included in the syllabus, but you should understand it. So please listen carefully. So the concept is, we have somebody called the library programmer, and another one will be the application programmer. All right. So I will explain this to you with a very simple example that is practically looking at us. Sorry, staring at us. So you have noticed that we have called this printf function multiple times. Okay. Have you ever wondered how is it possible that this function is executing whereas we have not defined it? Okay, so here is the reason behind it. By including this stdio.h, this is a header file. Okay, this only has the prototype of this printf function, but the definition of this printf function is in a library. Okay, it is a default library. I'm forgetting the exact name, but it gets linked to your object file when the final compilation occurs. So when the object file gets linked to the library. Okay, so these are the two steps. Okay, again, it is, I'm 100% sure it is not entirely clear to you, But at this point, just assume that we have a header file and we have a library that has the definition of this printf function. Okay, but this is how it happens. So see, suppose you have created a function that can be used maybe throughout your project or throughout your employer or throughout the industry. Okay, so say for example, it is say early 1970s, all right, and we have created this. Uh, okay, so say for example, C language is very new, and nobody has defined a function to or an entire code to create linked lists. Okay, now what will happen is that we have to so suppose you come along, create that entire code for the linked list. So what you will do is you will create the structure for the linked list. You will create the functions to add to the linked list. You will create the function to remove from that linked list and all that. So all that will be there. Okay. What you will not do is to create the main function. And here is why. What you are creating is something that is reusable. Okay. And what you will do is you will convert that to a library. Okay. And how to do that, that I will explain later. But at this point, just try to understand the basic concept that you have created a reusable component that can be used maybe in your project by the other developers or by the other teams in your company or in the entire industry. Okay, so you have done all that. So in this case, you are the library programmer. Okay, now somebody will come along and will use your reusable component. So what you will supply is the header file and either the lib file or the object file or something like that to these people. What they will do is they will include the header file in their program. They will write a program where they will have the main function, and in that they will include the header file that you have supplied to them, and they will write the code and compile. When they compile initially, what will happen is that the compiler will observe that the header file is there. It has so your whatever you have written over here is matching the definition of the function to say add a node or delete a node or things like that. So these things the application programmer will do. After that, he will link his object file with the library that you have supplied, and that in turn will generate the executable file. So this is what the application programmer will do. Okay, so we have got the library programmer and the application programmer. There is a reason why I am highlighting this, and this is an important concept. Many people don't realize it. Okay, but uh, so they don't really understand the full strength of creating reusable components and all that. Okay, now when I'm saying executable code, there is a reason why I'm highlighting it. So you might have noticed that we have created an executable file. Okay, so this executable file is understood by the operating system itself. Okay, so here you will notice that I have created an executable file with this name. Okay, when I run this, this is not coming very clearly. Okay, it is getting hidden. Okay, can you see? I think you can see it now. Okay, because a part of it was getting obscured. So here, this executable file can be understood directly by the operating system. This is the machine level instructions. So from our .c file, okay, which we have over here, okay, it is written in a human language or human-like language. Okay, this thing. From here, we have got something called an executable file, which is in machine instructions. Again, in this case, the executable file that we have created is understood by the Windows operating system indirectly. And we have got this DOS shell that we are looking at, but internally, it is the Windows operating system that is executing this program. If we had done this in Unix, it would have created an executable file that Unix would have understood. Okay. Now, as a sideline, and this will become clear to you when you learn Java, is that the executable file that we are creating in Windows cannot be understood by Unix. Okay, and the executable file that we create in Unix cannot be understood by the Windows operating system. Okay, so those are specific to the operating systems. At this time, this remark might seem insignificant to you, but when we later on learn Java, you will understand the exact meaning behind this. So this is something that I wanted to highlight. And so try to think about whatever I have told you about the application programmer and the library programmer and all that. That will prove useful. That concept will help you again and again later on also. Okay, so uh, creating a reusable component, and I mean any component that can be used uh, by others can save time and will show you as a very strong resource. So keep that in mind. All right. Um, and also whatever I have told you about the fact that an executable file created on one operating system cannot be understood by the other operating system. Okay, and that was one of the reasons why Java came along. So anyway, so that is that. And all right, now conditional branching. Okay, so I will cover this topic first. And in fact, what I will do is I will take a quick pause. If you have any questions, you can or do that later. Okay, instead of pausing now. Okay, if you have any questions, just start putting them on your WhatsApp channel. That's fine. Okay, now conditional branching. Okay, so we have got this. I've created one quick one, and I think we had got, and yes, arithmetic. First, let me cover this precedence. Okay, all right. So I have got a small uh, expression over here. You will notice. I will put that on a separate line. Okay, all right. So here I have got these operators, arithmetic operators. So we have got arithmetic operators and logical operators. And arithmetic operators are obviously add, subtract, multiply, and divide. And logical operators are and or. Okay, and we will come to that also. So here you will notice that I have an arithmetic expression. Okay, you will notice that here, if I run this, then for y, the value will be, so it will be 4 multiplied by 7, that is 28, plus 10, 38 multiplied by 5. Okay, in fact, I had a different value. Give me a second. All right. Now, if I run this application, okay, so it gave me a value of 6. So the value of y is equal to 6. I'm going to even put that here. Okay, so y is equal to 6. Why did we get this value? Because what it did was that here, it because this is in parenthesis, it computes this portion first. Okay, and here it is 4 and again this will happen first. Why? Because multiplication works first. So in fact, let me make this a little interesting. Okay, again, see, the precedence is, we'll highlight it in a different way. I will remove all parentheses from here. And let us see what happens. So you will see that the value of y is 28. And why is this the case? Because here there are no parentheses. So we follow the BODMAS rule. Okay, so the division will happen first, and this wait, okay, so y is equal to 30. Y here is y. So first the division will happen. Okay, so this is 10 divided by 5. We will get 2. Okay, then the multiplication. So we get 28, and then addition. So 28 plus 2 is 30. Okay, but if we overwrite this by some means, this time we get 13. Earlier we got 30. Why? This is why. Because now what it is doing is it is dividing, sorry, it is first adding, not dividing. Earlier it was dividing first. Now it is adding first. 7 plus 10 is 17. 17 divided by 5. Now because these are integers, it will give you the the rounded value. Okay, so 7 plus 10 is 17 divided by 5, that will give you 3, and 3 multiplied by 4, that will be hang on, yeah, so 7 plus 10, it will be 17, it will divide by 5, so 3. I'm not sure why we are getting an unexpected value. I'll have to find out, but all I wanted to tell you is that if I use parentheses, I can override the precedence of the arithmetic operators. Okay, so that is one thing, and so you can go through these operators on your own. Um, we have got this addition, then there will be a subtraction, multiplication, and then division. Okay, so these things you can go through on your own. These are very simple concepts, but you should also go through the precedence of the operators.
Sir,
Okay, yeah.
what happen if we place the bracket from for one place before 4 and a same bracket from 5? No, sir. After that also
Oh, okay.
7 plus 12 in bracket and 5 into 7 plus 12 in bracket divided by 5 also in bracket.
This way. Man.
After.
This one.
Yeah, sir. This is also a possibility.
Okay, fine. So again, you get 13. That's fine. There is some reason which.
Sir,
Okay, 7 plus 10 is 17. 17 multiplied by 4 is 68. 68 by 5. Oh, okay. All right, so it is 68 by 5. Yeah, that will be 13. Yes, that
Sir,
is the
the
reason.
exact value of pi is 13.6, but the compiler is
Yeah,
sir,
because this is
that
it, so it will round off. Yeah,
value.
it is integer type, right? In fact, let me change this, and also it depends upon what I'm using here in the printf function. Okay, so for some reason it is given 13.0. So we have to type first, not a problem. Yeah, you got it right.
Yes, sir.
All right. Fine. So that is that much, and yeah. So this covers. I don't know why this dev C++ is not working properly today. That's fine. I will fix it later. Right. So that is the precedence part. Okay. Logical operators are also there, and I will show you. All right. Now I'll tell you about this logical operator. This logical OR is there. Okay. So this logical OR, what it does is, it is our, it finds out whether this is true or that is true. If any of the values, any of the expressions, so these are called, so any operator will have operands. Okay, so this is an operator, and it is a binary operator. Why? Because it takes two operands. Okay, so what it does is, it finds out even this by itself from here to this is a logical expression. Okay, so what is an expression? It is a combination of operators and operands. Okay, what are operators? Operators are something that perform a computation. Okay, and operands are the inputs that you give to that particular operator. And a logical expression is a combination of operators and operands. So here the operator is the greater than sign in this expression. All right, operands are x and 10, and this is a logical expression. Why? Because it returns either true or false. Okay, so here it is comparing x and 10. What is the value of x? It is equal to 10. So this returns false. Then we are saying, let us look at the next logical expression. again here the logical operator is the greater than sign, and it is comparing a and 5. All right. So what is the value of a? 10. Okay, 10 is larger than 5, so this returns true. Now we come to the other operator. This is the OR operator. It is a logical operator. It takes two operands. Okay, it is also a binary operator. Okay, what is a binary operator? Something that takes two operands. We will come to ternary operator also. We have one of them later on. So that is this binary operator. It takes two operands. One is a logical expression on the left and a logical expression on the right. What it does is, if either of the two return true, this entire expression returns true. So here one of them returned true. That is why it went and returned 1. So you can see from the output here it said 1. That is why. Okay. So this is another operator, and we have got say AND is also there. So if I give AND here, let us see what difference does it make. Okay, so this will return true when both the expressions return true. We know that one of them returns false, and we can show this during runtime. So this time you will see that it returned with a value of 2 here. Why? Because it came here. Okay, and just a few words about this return value. You might have noticed that we have got these return statements within our main function. So it returns a value. To what does it return the value? It returns that value to the operating system. Okay, now I have not done the next thing what I'm going to tell you in Windows, but I did do this in Unix long time back. Okay, so we were writing C language programs in Unix, and the return value we were using later on for further processing. Okay, so that is a significance of this return statement. And I hope you guys have already been through a course on C language. Okay, so that you at least know all these things. Okay. Starting from the beginning on C language will be difficult for me. Okay, so I'm going to focus at a little bit of high level. If you still have any questions, okay, somewhere you don't understand, or maybe if I'm making an assumption about your prior knowledge and that assumption is incorrect, let me know. Okay, and I will adjust my lectures accordingly. Okay, and I will definitely answer your questions later on. Okay, all right. So that is what we have right now, and the next thing is loops. Okay, now there are three types of loops. We have got a for loop, while loop, and do while loop. Okay, these three loops are there. I will show you a simple for loop. Sorry, one mistake. Okay, all right. So you will notice that this is a for loop, and we can see how it works. So this is a loop. Okay, so we have got looping constructs in C language, C++, Java, and other tools also. Okay, so here what it does is it has three components over here. Okay, one is the initialization component, where we are initializing our counter. Okay, so basically we want to loop over something. Okay, so we initialize this over here, and this is our guard condition. As long as a is less than 10, you continue. So you initialize a to 0 and continue as long as a is less than 10. And this is the increment a plus plus. Okay, so here this is another, this is obviously a unary operator. Okay, it takes only one operand, and what it does is it increments the value of that, the operand. So here at the end of each loop, it will increase the value of a by 1. Okay, and we are displaying the value of a. Obviously, we'll see a difference if I write less than or equal to, and then if I compile and run, you will notice that it goes up to 10. Okay, so that is one thing. You can do a lot of things with these loops. Okay, so and all right, so that is one thing about this for loop. Then we have got a while loop, and me comment this out first. So the second loop we have is, and I will highlight another logical mistake that we might commit. Okay, so this is a while loop. Okay, so what it does is it initializes something. I mean, it computes something. Okay, while a is, so here we will have to initialize. So we have already declared a, and it is already equal to 10. So this will actually not execute. Okay, so this is one of the two logical mistakes. There is another one that I wanted to highlight. Okay, so you will notice that we have already initialized a to 10. Okay, if I write a is less than or equal to 10, it will execute only once. But then there is a problem. It will go into an infinite loop. Okay, because there is a logical problem here, a logical mistake. The mistake is in our logic. What it will do is it will say that, okay, while a is less than or equal to 10, so when it comes first time, what is the value of a? It is equal to 10. So it is saying it is equal to or less than 10. So we are good. Go ahead and show this. Okay, because this logical expression over here is returning true. It executes this. Now it comes back. What is the value of a at this point? It is still 10. So what happens? It still displays it. So this is actually an infinite loop. Okay, so it is a logical mistake. Okay, we should write plus plus here. Okay, now again, same thing will happen. We will get the same results. Okay, a is equal to 10. It executed only once. Okay, sorry, I said same result. Here it will come with, it will show only once. Why? Because see, while a is less than or equal to 10. Okay, so here what is the value of a? It is already 10, right? So this returns true here. Why do I say a is equal to 10? Because of this. Okay, so here we say that this is less than or equal to 10. Okay, so it displays it and then increments. Now the value of A is 11. So this returns false and it does not execute any further. All right. So that is why you saw it only once. Of course, if I write A is equal to 0 over here, and then I run this fellow. Okay. Again, the while loop will give you the same results. Okay. It will start with 0 and then end on 10. Okay. So these this is another loop, the while loop. Then we have got a do while loop. Here what will happen is that suppose I give the value of A as 11. All right. Now obviously the while loop will not execute, and we can see that for ourselves. So the while loop did not even execute. Okay. However, if I give here this is a do while loop. Okay. This time you will notice that it will execute once. Okay. Why did it do this? Because in the do while, the condition is checked at the very end. Okay, so it will execute at least one. It will say do it. Okay, go ahead, execute it once, and then we will see whether the condition is true or not. And here obviously we are incrementing the value. So here it is executing at least once, even when the value of even when this condition over here is returning false from the very beginning. It does not care. Okay, it executes at least once. Okay, so again, this will depend upon your requirements. In some cases, a do while will be necessary. Okay, and needless to say, if I increase this, if I initialize this to 0, then it will execute the way it was executing earlier. Okay, so now what you can see is that, and one more thing, a do while has to be ended with a semicolon because it is a statement. All right, so keep this keep that in mind. And so these are the three types of loops: for loops, while loops, and do while loops. Let us go to the next portion. Okay, so this we have already covered now. Okay, so I think unit 1 is done. Okay, and yes, one thing. Okay, I will have a word with Professor Rathod offline. Okay, but that's fine. At this point, I don't want to make that announcement. Okay, so if you have any questions, please post them in our common chat. But I think I have covered everything in unit 2. So if you have any questions, just post them, and I will answer them as soon as I can. All right, so I think we can end at this point in time. All right, guys, thank you so much. Okay, and keep learning.
Thank you, sir.
Don't stop. Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
yeah, read a lot. Okay, that I've said that earlier.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
All right, I will have to drop from the call now.
Thank you,
All
sir.
right, guys. Okay, bye.
Good night, sir. Thank you, sir.